Hi everyone, Lady Amalthea here, and I have a completely random non 31 Days of Tarot related video. So, I just finished earlier today watching the season finale of season 1 of His Dark Materials. Now, I've been a fan of the book since pretty much when they came out in sometime in the 90s. Maybe I should have looked this up. I remember picking up His Dark Materials, as it was called here, and from in the bookstore, Angus and Robinson's in Fonte Junction, which is no longer even exists, and being enchanted by the cover. I have the same edition cover wise as I remember seeing for the first time, and it's Lyra holding the alethiometer in her hands, looking down at it, and she's got Yorick Bernson standing over her shoulder. So it's this small dark-haired girl with a massive polar bear standing over her, and it's a blue cover, and oh my goodness, I just went, oh, I must read this book. Now I think this was when we were back from Fiji on holiday, so this would have been Christmas 96 that I first saw the book. I didn't get it for at least a year from memory, so I didn't get it until sometime in 97, and then I devoured it and devoured The Subtle Knife when that came out, and then actually caught a bus to buy the Amber Spyglass on the day it came out from the bookstore down a few suburbs away. So that was how big a deal it was, because like internet pre-ordering was not a thing then, because this, I would have still been early mid high school, I'm not sure. Honestly, I should have looked up the dates. These books had a massive impression on me as a child and young adult, teenager, call it what you will. And it's probably one of the first places I learned about divination. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with the books, the main character, Lyra Silvertongue, has a device called an alethiometer, which the American book is, the first book in the series is simply called the Golden Compass, because the device is kind of like a compass in that it's like a round thing with hands that you turn, and it's a divination tool. And Lyra learns to read this all by herself. She doesn't get help from anyone, and the men in power who have the alethiometers, as it's a controlled instrument, they have to read like hundreds and hundreds of books, and it takes them days to interpret a message, whereas she can interpret it once she works out how to do it, she can interpret it within moments. And I just thought, wow, how incredible, how absolutely magical. And rewatching, I reread the books every few years, and the recent HBO TV series got it spot on. There was a movie a couple of years ago with Nicole Kidman and Daniel Craig, which was not a good movie, and they didn't get the feeling right. Like, they're quite dark books, and they were probably some of the darkest books I read as a child. And I was having a discussion with a friend earlier, saying, oh my gosh, I love the show, I really wish I had someone to discuss it with. And she was like, how are you not horrified by these books? I'm like, they were more magical to me than anything. And honestly, they were probably the real, apart from things like Enid Blyton, which do have their own kind of magic, but they were probably the starting point for me on my magical journey. And even though it ended up being quite a long time before I stepped into that magic, I really think that Lyra and her alethiometer are where I got my interest in divination from. And yeah, so like I've got a lot to be thankful for Philip Pullman. And I remember reading that he wrote these books as kind of like an antidote to the Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, Chronicles of Narnia books by C.S. Lewis, which are also books I hold in high regard from my childhood that I absolutely love. And I did mention a few days ago in a prompt that I would have loved to have been able to read the tarot for C.S. Lewis, that he's an absolute favourite author of mine. And despite the fact that I no longer am a Christian, I still think it would be very, very interesting to talk with him. And yeah, so I find it very interesting that two series from my childhood are so different to each other that one could be considered an antidote to the other. And it's also part of another journey of mine. I've always been interested in mythology. Always, ever since I can remember, stories have always captivated me. My father was an amazing storyteller, and he used to tell me amazing stories that he would invent and weave. And on a laptop that's sitting behind me, I actually have stories that he wrote that I'm hoping to actually publish, because he just used to write such enchanting stories. That's a project for the future when I can handle reading his writing, because right now it's still too raw. Even though, you know, it's been 4 years, it still feels too soon. And yeah, that was kind of his wish, was that I kind of turn that into a book. So yeah, I think I got my love of stories from my dad. And like, I could read before I started school. I was always a very keen reader, and whilst certainly I don't read quite as much as I used to, my brain gets in the way nowadays, I still love devouring a story. And at one of my schools, I went to 9 schools in total, at one of my schools I pretty much lived in the library, and I was frequently in the mythology section and reading as many mythology books as I could. I'm sure I had them memorized at one point. And one of the ones I was always drawn to were the North, what is wrong with me? Norse myths. Absolutely love them. Always been interested in them. And over time, there's always been threads of Scandinavia in my life. I mean, I'm sitting at an IKEA desk for one, and I've got IKEA furniture all around me. So, sorry, don't mind me and my silly sense of humour. But more and more recently, the pull to the Norse and Scandinavian world has become louder and louder. In a full moon ritual that I attended, I believe it was the October last year full moon, I participated in a ritual, and in the meditation where we like draw our shield around us and call back in our guides and those who we wish to work with, and I call back in my guides, and suddenly Odin's there, and I'm like, wait, what? I've not worked with Norse. I've not worked with the Æsir before. What's going on? And Odin has been making himself known louder and louder in my life. Let me tell you, I was in the library yesterday in between running around, and I overheard the librarian and a customer talking about the TV show Vikings, and then I turned around to kind of work out where the sound was coming from. And in the bookcase directly behind me, I spotted this, the Viking Saga. So of course I had to bring it home with me, along with several other titles. You can't go to the library and just pick up one thing. Like, what is the point? There may now be a hole in my library bag because I put so many books in there. And that's just one example of Scandinavia calling to me. For another example is I last week, I think it was, finished listening to a audiobook that I had been listening to for a little while, because I'd only been listening to 20 minutes every night before I go to sleep for a while, kind of thing. And it's called Sagaland by Richard Feidler and Kaori Gleason. Hope I'm saying that right. And it's about, so Kaori was born, it's a true story. Kaori was born in Iceland and grew up predominantly in Australia, and did his thesis on the Icelandic sagas. And this book is about him finding his Icelandic heritage and identity, and also retelling the stories of the sagas. And it was just absolutely fascinating, and I really, really enjoyed it. And it was cool hearing all the names being pronounced properly, because I don't speak Icelandic or any of the Scandinavian languages. I've never studied them. I know how to say hello in Norwegian, and that's about it. Yeah, which is hey. And I just, everywhere I was looking, I was seeing little hints, little things that Scandinavia is calling for me. So maybe I'll get to go visit. Who knows? That would be lovely. I'm certainly not sure that's going to happen anytime soon. My next plane trip will certainly be to Sydney. Not going anywhere further than that, but sorry, I think I've got mild hiccups. But like all these things, all these Scandinavian things have been calling to me. So, and Odin and Freya have kind of very loudly been saying, you need to work with us. So that's kind of thrown this Celtic deity worshipper for six. Like I said, I've not worked with the Æsir before, so this is a whole new thing for me. I've worked with ancient Egyptian deity, with ancient Greek, Celtic. Those have been predominantly the ones I've worked with, and of course the Fae. So yeah, it's this whole new chapter for me, and a thing that I'm going to be using to help myself through this is this, Stacey DeMarco's Viking Oracle, Wisdom of the Ancient Norse. Now, I don't even own runes, for example, but I think there are rune cards in this deck from memory. And so, yeah, I'm just going to be using this just to kind of get a better, sorry, it's a bit glary, just to have images to kind of focus on. Oops. What am I doing here? Let me just grab a card out of here. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the name of a rune. Yeah, I'm pretty sure these are runes. The back of the card is, the cards are absolutely gorgeous. Now, I know not everyone is into these decks, but something I'm certainly willing to give a go, and just like everywhere I'm looking at the moment. Yggdrasil. And I've been watching man himself, Odin. I was so tempted to rewatch Thor Ragnarok tonight, actually, but didn't end up doing that. Maybe tomorrow, we'll see. But yeah, like certainly the rise of Thor's character in the Marvel universe, in like the cinematic universe, has risen in popularity, and all the Asgardian stuff, and like I just mentioned Thor Ragnarok, which is easily one of the best superhero movies in my opinion. I'm not here to start a fight about superhero movies. It's directed by Taika Waititi. I mean, come on. But yeah, it's just really interesting that something I've not really thought about before has really called to me recently, and I don't know what form this devotion is going to take, and I certainly don't plan on going into great detail on this channel because a lot of my worship and belief is quite private, even though I'm certainly willing to share a general overview kind of thing. Certain aspects are, yeah, certainly more personal, and it's not that I'm like trying to be coy or anything, but you just don't know who's watching these videos, like, and yeah, if you're also a fellow magic worshipper, usually you get what I mean. Like, you just don't know. So I don't feel 100% comfortable just divulging everything. Like, maybe if I were talking to you, the viewer, face to face, person to person, I might go into greater detail about certain aspects of my practice. But in general, yeah, I'm not going to detail step by step in a YouTube video. Yeah, I just thought I felt like I needed to kind of talk about this more for my own sake than anything, just to kind of get it out of my head, because it certainly feels like it's all just ruminating in there. So I felt, if I name this current call to the Æsir, if I name it out loud, then surely that will help. Even Kratos, god of war, got called to Scandinavia, so like, come on. So yeah, like, that's really just a ramble from me, and I'm sure this won't really appeal to a lot of people, but it is what it is. And yeah, thank you for watching, and until next time.